Welcome to our series on the new code of professional practice. Today, we're focusing on communication, one of the most important foundations of professionalism. It affects everything from how chiropractors speak with patients to how they present themselves online. I am joined once again by Nick Jones, Chief Executive and Registrar at the GCC, and Andrew Fielding, Policy and Insights Officer. Great to have you both again for this one.
Thank you. Good to see you, Julia.
You too, always. So we're covering a lot of ground when it comes to communication, social media, advertising, promotion, but also how chiropractors speak to their patients. Let's start with that, if you don't mind. How should they be communicating with their patients according to the new code? What are the key updates here?
The key point we want to emphasise is that communication is central to good quality care. Many of the complaints I see about from patients about their care relate to a breakdown in communication, different expectations of the patient and the chiropractor. So I think fundamentally communication drives safe and effective care. Two, communication comes in so many different forms, whether that's clinical information, digital information, and written information. All of those things contribute to communication, which must be clear, respectful, honest, and truthful.
Yeah, absolutely. So much of it is about that, being clear about what the communication is. And for me, it's not just about what you're saying, but it's what's being received. So what's the patient hearing? What's their understanding? As a chiropractor, test that, check that, find out, make sure that they understand exactly what you're trying to say to them. Are you getting your message across? Because fundamentally that, if you're providing clinical care, if you need the informed consent, part of valid consent, if they need to be informed, you need to understand that they actually understand what they're getting involved in, what their expectations are. And as Nick said, so many complaints that come to us. The communication, it may not be the main part of the complaint, but it is a part. And I think that's the other thing, is that don't be afraid. Communication is two-way. So when you have that moment, you realise that the patient hasn't understood what you said, or that they're unhappy, or they have some concerns about your practice or your care, what have you, then that's your cue. That's the opportunity to try and fix that, to really work hard on your communication and improve that relationship, get them back together where you both want to be, work together on that.
And the code is a helpful guide just to show what good looks like. But it's not, of course, just about patient and chiropractor care. It's about lots of different elements of communication, and advertising is one area that just seems to raise many questions amongst the community. So what should chiropractors be aware of when it comes to advertising?
Well, I think the first thing to kind of note is that advertising has got a bit of a history within the profession. And we also know that there are codes of practice that have to be followed. I take a simple view, which is that misleading information is disrespectful to patients and it's unprofessional. It's a fairly simple equation.
Mm-hmm. As Nick says, we're not the only regulator in this game. For advertising, there's the Advertising Standards Authority, and the code makes reference to them and says you need to follow all the guidance and standards of all the regulators that apply to you as a business. I think from an advertising point of view, it is not just about paid advertising. It covers things like websites, it covers things like social media, it covers publications that you might produce. And as a chiropractor, you have the benefit of a list of treatable conditions, which the Advertising Standards Authority say, we don't need to see any evidence for these. These are things that chiropractors can always treat. If you're not a chiropractor, you have to prove every single condition that you treat. If you're wanting to promote your services around something that isn't on that list, then you need to have the evidence, you need to be able to verify, it needs to be factual what you're saying. So don't exaggerate, don't mislead the public. And I think the other really important point is that as a chiropractor, you're still responsible for your advertising, even if you've asked somebody else to do that for you. So whether you're working with a marketing agency, whether you're working with a member of staff who's got that responsibility, that is still ultimately your responsibility to make sure that they're meeting the standards.
Okay, so that oversight from the chiropractor themselves, from the healthcare professional, is absolutely paramount.
Yeah.
Understood. Can I ask you then about websites next? I know you touched on it, but let's dig deeper, because that is often the first place a patient looks. So what do you discuss in the code?
Websites are doing a lot of things, aren't they? They're the public-facing shop window, if you like, and it's conveying all sorts of different information: marketing information, clinical information, information about the people who work in the clinic providing services, and so on. And again, it's public-facing, and it's subject to the requirements of decency and honest information, isn't it, Andrew?
Absolutely. I think the key change that we've added into this is that we want the profession to be proud of being a chiropractor and being registered with the GCC and able to use that title. So if you're a chiropractor, you need to make it clear to the patient that you are registered with the General Chiropractic Council, and the website is a perfect place to do that. Yeah. So many websites we check out, they've got little biographies about why people came into chiropractic, making the chiropractor approachable, and just adding into that is a registrant with the GCC, ideally with a link to the entry on the register. That's all you need to do, but just that's getting the message out there that this is a regulated profession, so that patients know what to look out for. If you're working alongside people that aren't regulated by statute, so if you're working alongside an osteopath or a physiotherapist, if you're a chiropractor, we want you to be clear about who they are registered with as well. It's all about the patient understanding who is providing their care, what those skills are that individual has, and what they can expect from that care. And that's where the General Chiropractic Council registration, we're almost the guarantee of that. That's the important message to get across. We're the shorthand that patients can trust that the person that's providing their care is going to be able to provide brilliant, safe clinical care.
Another area to do with communication that raises a lot of questions is social media. I, on my feed, see a lot of content with clicking and cracking. Chiropractic content can lend itself to virality. It can go viral. But I want to ask you about the code's approach to social media. Of course, it's a really handy tool, but what does the code say on it?
I think you're absolutely right. There is a type of content used overseas where chiropractic becomes entertainment. It's not clinical care. It's not patient focused. The key piece I would look at in the code, which is new, is around the dignity of the patient. And even if the patient is anonymous, it's about remembering they're a patient, remembering they're a human being. And we see this sometimes. You see chiropractors sharing case studies, asking for help from other chiropractors in Facebook groups, that sort of thing, which is fantastic. We want chiropractors collaborating and asking for help, but it's still remembering that patient is a real person.
I think for me, social media is central to our society now, isn't it? There are so many opportunities presented by social media that we simply can't ignore. But opportunities, but there are also some risks. So I think a simple message is think before you post.
Right.
Like Nick says, it's about thinking before you post and really understanding what are you posting and why.
Mm-hmm. Well, one last piece on this before we get into some frequently asked questions by the chiropractors within the community. How does communication as a theme connect to professionalism, broadly speaking?
Well, like I mentioned before, seeing complaints from patients around all aspects of care often comes back to communication. And if a patient is expressing concerns, I think it's so important for the chiropractor to be receiving those and hearing those concerns, and not shutting their minds to some of the issues that arise from that.
Yeah, that's the opportunity to try and work closely with the patient and help them put things right, get to a better position. Ultimately, that'll build trust between the patient and the chiropractor. Actually, it can be a positive process. It doesn't have to be seen as something negative.
Okay, let's explore some frequently asked questions that we get from chiropractors pertaining to communication. Lots of questions on this, so you've got them in front of you to refer to as well. Let's start off with this top one here. It asks, what does good communication actually look like in a busy clinic where time is limited and patients might have different expectations?
Yeah, so listening is so central. That communication is two-way. So lots of eye contact, summarising, checking their understanding. It's not just what you say; it's what they're hearing, what's their understanding. And I think as well, keeping it brief, keeping it short. People struggle to take too much information in at one go. So keeping it brief, but also consistency. Your policies, what you're saying in person, what's going on social media, what's on your website, have the same story, have that consistent message throughout.
Yeah, if what you say in person is undermined by what you write in an email, then of course,
absolutely, yeah,
there's jeopardy there. Okay, moving to the second question. Some chiropractors worry about how much to say when explaining risks or explaining benefits. So how can they strike the right balance?
It's a tricky one, Julia. I mean, we recognise that communicating lots of information in a relatively short timescale is challenging. It's probably not a good idea to explain in minute detail the latest randomised control trial results,
Sure.
for example. But I think what's really important is keeping things transparent about what's known and also what's not known. And in order to make a reliable decision, you need to have the right amount of information so that it builds credibility.
Right.
And that if they're informed, then they're able to make that consent, and that will build that trust between you as a patient and a chiropractor. That's what it all comes down to, isn't it?
Okay, great, thank you. Third frequently asked question, can chiropractors share patient testimonials or reviews online?
Absolutely. As long as they're a genuine review, then that is the patient's experience of the care you're providing. You are able to share that. There are some caveats. You can't incentivise positive reviews. So you've got to be very careful that if you're asking reviews, that you will be receiving both positive and negative reviews. And you have got to be careful not to imply kind of guaranteed outcomes, because that's that individual patient's experience. It will differ for other patients. So there's something about it's the patient's experience, not necessarily the impact that your care has had.
Okay, so no fabricated reviews, no incentivised reviews, but authentic ones, totally
Absolutely.
Fine. Understood. Next question, we're firing through these. How should chiropractors respond if they do receive a negative review or online criticism generally?
Well, as Andrew says, a negative review is a possibility. And of course, you can respond to those. But again, exercising some care, making sure the response is professional and courteous and doesn't reveal patient identifying information.
Okay.
And in that sort of situation, it's well worth reaching out to the patient privately, having that conversation behind the scenes, offline. Take a moment to respond. Don't just dive straight in there, isn't it? That's the professional way of doing it.
Yeah, that's good advice generally. Take a breather.
Take a breather
before sending anything. Okay, next up, what is your advice for chiropractors who want to use social media for health education?
Yes, so there's a lot of health education out there, health information out there, and patients increasingly are going to social media to look for advice. As a chiropractor, it's your professional duty to share accurate evidence-based information. You've got to be very careful to avoid that sort of alarmist, promotional, very salesy approach, I think it's fair to say, isn't it? And just keep professional, and ideally keep your professional and your personal identity separate. Both will reflect on you as a professional. So whatever you're saying, remember you are a professional, and that you need to think about the patient's expectations of you in that role as a professional.
Well, thank you. And you can find the full code of professional practice on our website at gcc-uk.org. The GCC newsletter will help continue to share updates so that you can be prepared for the new code, and you'll also find supporting content and guidance on our social media channels. Thank you for watching.